Again, you're listening to the Schiffer Report. I'm your host, Paul Schiffer. For the next 20 to 25 minutes or so, I will be interviewing Alan Gottlieb. He's very much in favor of the Second Amendment. He's an expert on that Second Amendment. He's very pro-gun, obviously. Alan Gottlieb, among many other roles he plays. He's the chairman of the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. He's the executive vice president of the Second Amendment Foundation, and he's also on the board of that fabulous conservative group based out of Washington, D.C., the American Conservative Union. He is here with us today to talk about Operation Fast and Furious. Welcome to the broadcast, Mr. Gottlieb.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Paul.
Well, it's great to have you. I've read a lot of your information. I'm very pro-Second Amendment, and this is the second time on this broadcast that we've tackled this issue that seems to be becoming bigger news every day that passes, this Operation Fast and Furious. I spent the past 25 minutes or so briefing the audience, in case they haven't. If you've just been following the major media, you don't know much about this story. But go ahead, Alan. Give us your summary of this, and how bad do you think this is?
Well, I guess let me start a little bit for your listeners who may not be aware of what it is. Let me talk about the program. Mm-hmm. Fast and Furious is an operation done by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms under the Justice Department's direction, under Attorney General Eric Holder. And what they did with this is that they sold guns in very large quantities to licensed gun dealers by telling the gun dealers to sell the guns to store buyers or purchasers that were taking the guns and in quantity along the lots of millions of rounds of ammunition across the border to Mexico and dumping them with the drug cartel. And the supposed purpose of this program, which I don't believe, was so they could track and target and catch the drug cartel leadership in Mexico. Right. Of course, they never told Mexico that this was happening, so Mexico wasn't aware that this was even going on. The cover on this whole thing got blown when one of these guns came back across the border and was used to kill Border Patrol Agent Brian Terry last December. And then a couple of ATF agents couldn't live with that on their conscience and became whistleblowers on this program and gave a lot of documents over to a couple of congressmen and senators who opened up investigations on this program. Right. Only to find out that the administration then was covering it up and didn't want anybody to know about it and was doing everything it could to stop the investigations from progressing. What we know now is that Attorney General Eric Holder, under testimony under oath before Congress in May, lied to the Congress about when he knew about this project. He told the Congress he only heard about it a few weeks before his testimony, when we know it goes back to 2009 that he knew about it. And we have documents and videotapes of him talking about it, and he outright lied to Congress about it. Now Congress this week has asked for a special prosecutor to be appointed by the President to investigate both Eric Holder and the Justice Department's role in all of this. And, of course, I sort of doubt that the President is going to appoint a special prosecutor, but my urging would be for President Obama to fire Attorney General Eric Holder before the American people fire Obama in the next election.
It may be Obama's only way to slide out of this if this gains any more traction, Alan. He may have to just basically let Eric Holder take the fall, so to speak.
At this point, if not, I believe it reaches into the White House, because we now know from the documents that not just was the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Treasury Department and the Justice Department involved in this, but we also had the Customs Department and the CIA and the Internal Revenue Service involved. There's no way all these agencies would be coordinating this project and this program if it weren't being directed out of the White House to start with. when it gets that interagency, somebody in the White House was directing this, and I can't believe that the president did not know about it, and especially since he said he didn't know about it until very recently either, when in fact, when we have a Border Patrol agent is shot and killed by one of these firearms, and it makes the press, I can't believe that in the Daily News Digest for the president on his desk wouldn't have been the story to begin with. So it's hard to believe either this administration is 100% incompetent and really stupid, or they're really corrupt to begin with, which is what I think it was, because I believe this whole project had a motive to it. And that was, if you remember last year, Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder said that 90% of the guns used in crime in Mexico are traced back to the United States, and we need to ban gun shows, ban semi-automatic assault rifles. Well, those numbers were bogus, and they're bogus for lots of reasons, but we called to attention that most of the guns used in crime in Mexico are now Chinese weapons without serial numbers that could never come from the United States, or guns that came from military dictatorships in South America that were sold to the drug cartel, which couldn't come from the United States, or military deserters in Mexico who gave their guns to the drug cartel for money. Those guns didn't come from the United States, or corrupt police departments and officials in Mexico who are in cahoots with the drug cartel and gave them the guns. Those couldn't come from the United States. I believe this program was concocted in this particular manner, sell the guns on purpose to go to Mexico, so then the administration could say, see, our numbers are correct, the guns being used in Mexico in crime do come from the United States. They just didn't expect to get caught with their pants down.
This is amazing. We have an administration that any thinking person knows is very much against the Second Amendment, very much in favor of gun control. They want to take our guns away. That's obvious. Hillary Clinton's been promoting some of these schemes as Secretary of State. She's all in favor of the UN gun ban and trying to force the United States of America and our Justice Department to conform to United Nations mandates to take away all of our guns. U.S. Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, as you know, is leading the way on that in the U.S. Senate. So here we have a anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment administration purposely selling thousands of assault weapons and such to the Mexican Drug Cartel in order for more deaths to occur in the United States so they can use that as an excuse to take away our guns.
That's what it looks like. There's no other explanation to this that would make any sense, because in the past, any sting operation that these agencies were involved in would amount to finding somebody who had the illegal guns, offering to buy them. When the person sells them to you, you bust the guy and take him off the street, take the guns off the street at the same time. You don't reverse the process where you sell the guns to the bad guy by thereby putting the guns on the street. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the administration has had no explanation for why this so-called program went awry. They just said, talking about how well our motive was good. Well, I don't think the motive was good at all. I think the motive was highly political.
I have a story, some of my information that I have pertaining to Operation Fast and Furious. Some of it comes from Andy Ramirez. He's the founder and president of the Law Enforcement Officers Advocates Council. And he's been writing extensively on this issue and about the death of Border Agent Brian Terry and ICE Special Agent Jamie Zapata. And also Accuracy in Media's website, a few days ago, they have a posting from Roger Aronoff called Operation Fast and Furious, the scandal that can no longer be denied. Apparently, there are dozens, at least, of Border Patrol agents and ATF agents from the inside who are risking their jobs and their well-being by going forward as whistleblowers, or some of them at least behind the scenes, revealing a lot of what some of these people know. And some of these people have been speaking to Congressman Dara Issa and U.S. Senator Charles Grassley. Tell us what's happening in ISA's committee pertaining to this scandal, how far they're going with this, and what Senator Charles Grassley knows.
Well, Grassley is also working closely with ISA with the House Government Oversight Committee doing this work. So they're sort of sharing their information. And basically they have a significant amount of documents that were provided by whistleblowers. They also have some documents that were provided by the Justice Department that are highly redacted. But they have some copies of the original documents from the whistleblowers so they can see that what was redacted was information that was trying to protect the administration. They also have a lot of foreign testimony, some of which was done behind closed doors by agents who didn't want to testify publicly and had their own private attorneys there for their own protection, giving ISA and Senator Grassley information about how the Justice Department was covering this up. At this point, it's pretty well known that that's a given. There's no doubt that they're covering this up. What's come up recently is the fact that when Eric Holder testified before Congress, he committed perjury, and now the committee is wants that perjury investigated by a special prosecutor. So it's ongoing. The administration obviously is trying to stonewall it all. The cover-up is probably worse than the crime, even though the crime in this case is kind of bad. I mean, in Watergate, the cover-up was worse than the crime, but nobody died.
Right.
Here now we have not only a Border Patrol agent, but we have over a dozen U.S. citizens that have been killed by these guns, and over 200 innocent Mexicans that have been killed by the guns in Mexico. The Mexican government is appalled by this. They did not know any of this was going on. They're furious.
It's got to be pretty bad if the Mexican government, which is corrupt, and a lot of them supporting different factions of the drug cartel, if they think this is bad, that's pretty bad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at this point, the administration is losing friends and face all over the place. The only thing that's transparent with this administration about this thing is every time they move their lips, we know they're lying. This has really gotten really, really bad. And it doesn't really matter, again, if you're pro-gun rights or anti-gun rights. The fact that these crimes by our own government and getting guns crossing a border into another country is being done in our name means that everybody should be appalled by this, pro-gun or anti-gun.
Yeah.
This goes far beyond the gun rights issue itself. This is administration run amok.
It does. And it shows how radical and fanatical they are pertaining to shoving their gun control agenda down our throats, just like they're shoving everything else down our throats. Gay marriage, abortion on demand, decimating our economy. It just never stops with these guys.
It's really just outrageous. And then when they don't even fess up to it, they try to hide what they're doing. This also plays in line of Obama a few months ago met with all the leaders of the anti-gun rights groups in this country, the gun control movement.
Yeah.
And they were upset with him that we're not seeing you doing a whole lot. And Obama told them, I'm doing it all, but I have to do it under the radar. They came out of the meeting to talk about how, to their friends, hey, this is great. Obama is still with us. He's just doing it all under the radar.
I guess Operation Fast and Furious is part of the under the radar approach, huh?
Yep.
And, come on. Even if you're that evil and cynical and nefarious, to implement a policy like this, you'd think that somebody at the top would have the wisdom to know that, we can't do this because somebody could eventually get killed here and there could be severe blowback. I wonder why nobody thought
it gets worse. Let me go a little bit further on this. Okay, when Border Patrol Agent Brian Terry was murdered with one of these guns that came from Fast and Furious, the autopsy on his body, the family wanted it done. The federal government, Justice Department, tried to stop the autopsy because they didn't want the proof that the bullet fired came from one of these guns. Then on top of that, now that they busted one of the low-level mules that were transporting these guns, that was supposedly one of their informants, Brian Terry and his family, his lawyers, have one of their advocates as part of the trial, which normally happens all the time for the victim's family gets to have an advocate at the trial. Our Justice Department denied them the right to have the advocate at the trial, which is highly unusual, to the point where the judge had to tell them no, that they can participate. I mean, this has gotten to the point where there's not even any fairness in this.
Do you know much about the drug war? I brought with me for reference because it coincides with this story, Operation Fast and Furious, the cover story of Newsmax magazine back in June, co-written by Ken Timmerman, a great conservative writer. You probably know of him. It's called The Collapse of Mexico. Its Civil War Comes to America. Do you know how bad it's getting down there?
Well, I read that same article on Newsmax, and lots of people have also referred it to me, and say, have you read it? And yes. I don't know anything more than what was in the article. I don't really follow the drug part of this. I just follow the gun rights battle.
Right.
So unfortunately, I'm not the right person to answer that question, but I would refer to the article. I think is worth everybody reading at Newsmax.
Yeah, definitely. You're listening to the Schiffer Report. I'm your host, Paul Schiffer. My guest presently on tonight's broadcast is Alan Gottlieb. He's the chairman of the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. He's also the executive vice president of the Second Amendment Foundation, and he's with the American Conservative Union also. Phone lines are open if you'd like to join in this discussion tonight. Feel free to give us a call at 330-492-6881. That's 330-492-6881. If you're listening in the Tuscarawas County area, call us toll-free at 330-874-5400. 2424. Also remember, folks, I'll promote this a couple more times tonight and on Monday's broadcast, Monday's edition of the Schiffer Report here on WNPQ. I have a fundraising dinner, a fundraising event that I'm throwing, a Schiffer Report fundraising dinner, next Wednesday, October 12th. Again, next Wednesday, October 12th, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the 356 Fighter Group. That's an excellent restaurant located near the Akron-Canton Airport. That, again, will be next Wednesday, October 12th, a fundraising dinner to raise funds for this program. This is a pay-to-play program, and we need funding to continue, so I decided to have a dinner, an event to meet the people in the listening audience. I'd like to meet those of you that are interested in coming out to next week. We'll have a lot of fun, too. We're going to have some raffles, obviously some giveaways, and some speeches by some prominent conservative leaders here in Northeast Ohio. Again, that's the Schiffer Report fundraising dinner next Wednesday, October 12th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the 356 Fighter Group. Alan, let's talk a little bit about who knows what. There are apparently all these people within law enforcement that knows what's going on. They've been helping Grassley with the Senate committee and also Dara Issa in the House. Let's talk about some of the materials that they've received, some of the briefings they've gotten already. These committees have forced Eric Holder to release some things. What has been actually released? How damning have those documents been? And how much longer can they continue this cover-up before the dam burst?
Well, virtually nothing that the Justice Department has released has been useful. What they have released it's been highly redacted, so you can't read what's there really. And they've been stonewalling and saying that, well, we're doing our own investigation because we're investigating this. We can't give you the materials, which is an absolute stonewall. The documents and the information that the committees have and this Congressman and Senator Grassley has is basically been coming from whistleblowers. And those include, memos, emails, various personal testimony. And based on the emails and the documents, we pretty much know that Eric Holder was directly involved in this. The Justice Department knew about it when they claiming they didn't know about it. And we know that the White House, at least one person at the White House knew about it. It's mentioned in the memos, and some of the emails come from him as well out of the White House.
Right.
So we can't say for certainty that Obama knows about it, but we do know that the White House person that deals with the stuff knows about it. It's hard to believe the president wouldn't have had it in his briefing book at a minimum. And none of this looks good for the administration because what they've come out and they've said has been untruthful. And they've been forced to make the statements, and then when they make them, they try to clean them up later on, contradicting themselves, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. There's an awful lot of smoke here, and at this point, I think we can see the fire. The question is, will it burn the whole house down?
Man, I hope it does, not just because of this issue, but which is very heinous in and of itself, but because of everything else this administration is doing to destroy our economy and bring our country down.
The one area they've done well for the economy on is Obama should be gun salesman of the year. Because of all his anti-gun policies and rhetoric, He has fueled the sale of guns and ammunition like no president ever has. So the one area of the economy that's doing well, quite frankly, is guns and ammunition. It's only because Obama wants to take them all away.
And how many other innocent people are going to die because of these thousands of weapons? I mean, they're saying that it could literally be thousands and not just 1,500.
Well, we now know it's over 2,500 from Arizona alone, and we don't have all the numbers from Arizona. But we now know that Senator Cronin from Texas, people there have leaked him information showing this Project Fast and Furious was also going on in Texas. Texas shares a much bigger border with Mexico and has bigger cities like Houston and Dallas with a lot more, guns that can be bought from licensed gun dealers. That when they call in, the ATF FBI have been approving the sales when they shouldn't have been. And in fact, with gun dealers, we have a few gun dealers that have said, "Hey, I don't want to sell these guys these guns. Something's fishy here." They're told by the government, "No, we know all about it. We want you to sell them the guns." So we now know there's a significant number in Texas. It's being estimated at well over 1,000 at a minimum out of Texas alone. You also know, forget the guns, there's millions of rounds of ammunition that have been sold to these same people that have all crossed the border. So when you can't trace the guns, you surely can't trace the bullets.
I gave a rundown before you came on how dangerous and how evil these drug lords are, Alan, and it's amazing. These people are as bad or worse and as bloodthirsty and barbaric as Al-Qaeda.
And we're seeing them not only operate now in Mexico, we're seeing them cross the border into our border states, operating across the border in the United States as well. And it's, it's resulting in new deaths and beheadings, along the border that are tending to cross the border to our side. And we now know from intelligence from these Border Patrol agents that I've talked to in Arizona that these cartel people are really operating on our side of the border as well as in Mexico now. And it's really gotten really bad, and it's going to get worse.
I have a copy in front of me of an excerpt from the response letter from Assistant U.S. Attorney General Ronald Wyke, who works directly under Eric Holder, obviously. Senator Grassley in the summer, earlier in the summer, was demanding that the Attorney General's office release all these documents. And one of these letters that came from the Assistant U.S. Attorney General Ronald Wyke said, we want to protect investigators and the law enforcement personnel who directly contact them from inappropriate political influence. For this reason, we respectfully request that committee staff, as Grassley's committee, not contact law enforcement personnel seeking information about pending criminal investigations. Translation, they're telling these experts to lawyer up. The Department of Justice apparently is instructing Congress not to talk with the agents.
That's correct. And now we had this past week where a CBS reporter got her hands on a lot of these documents that prove that Eric Holder didn't tell the truth to Congress, that implicate him in this, and that he was not truthful in telling Congress that when he finally found out about this program. She has been called and maligned and yelled at by both the White House and the Justice Department. And she cannot believe the way she's being treated by both the Justice Department and the White House because she's, quote-unquote, doing the stories on this. And she's now come out to talk about how the undue pressure is being done. And you can just imagine if you had a Republican president in the White House and if their Justice Department was putting pressure on the media not to investigate things, and the media would go absolutely bonkers and go wild. But a lot of the media is giving Obama a free pass on this because obviously they want him reelected, and gun control is part of their agenda as well.
Yeah. It's amazing. What amazes me, even the liberal Anderson Cooper recently did a special on CNN about this.
Yeah, CNN has done a couple stories on it. Fox News has done a number. CBS has one woman investigative reporter at CBS has now done 3 or 4 very excellent ones on it. NBC has done 0, and to my knowledge, ABC has done 0. It's like it just hasn't been. The Washington Post did one story on it, and it basically tried to exonerate the administration on the story. It was extremely slanted. The New York Times has virtually ignored the story. The LA Times has done a couple good pieces on it, but by and large, the national media is just looking the other way at probably the biggest scandal to rock any administration in my lifetime, and they won't even discuss it.
And to show how we're not really serious at all about protecting the border, Alan, and I know this is issues and aside, but it's very important for conservatives, is to stop the invasion of the illegal aliens coming across the border. The agent Brian Terry, who was killed by one of these druggies that coming across the border, he was under order. His entire BORTAC unit, those are like special forces on our border, BORTAC group. They were under orders to use only non-lethal beanbag loads against these drug warlords and bandits, and these bandits responded in killing him with the WASR-10s. It's a variant of the Russian AK-47 assault rifle. So you got Russian AK-47 assault rifles and other weapons being used, and our special units are under command to only use non-lethal beanbag loads.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's appalling, and I met with 3 Border Patrol agents recently in Arizona, one of which had worked with Brian Terry in the past, another one who had known Brian Terry, and they're just appalled by all this. I mean, it's like they just can't believe it. And, of course, they're really upset with the ATF and the Justice Department and the administration for what they're doing. They spoke to me in private. We can't speak out in public because if they do, they're in jeopardy. And there's an awful lot of people in law enforcement that are not pleased with how this administration has been handling anything at the border. And now Fast and Furious has just turned everything upside down.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Alan. I'll give you a few minutes here, or longer if you want, to promote all of your groups or single out one of them. You are chairman of Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms and executive vice president of Second Amendment Foundation, among many other roles that you play. What would you like to promote right now? And feel free to give your...
Let me talk a little bit about the Second Amendment Foundation, because we've been very involved in a lot of the litigation protecting gun rights, from the Heller decision to the McDonald decision that knocked out D.C. and Chicago's gun bans and said the Second Amendment's an individual right and it applies to all 50 states. We now have 24 key cases around the country in federal court involving gun rights that are really important. They're all on our website at saf.org. I think your listeners would get a kick out of taking a look at how we're winning our rights back one lawsuit at a time. And that's at saf.org.
Okay. And do you have any involvement in trying to expose what's going on when it comes to Hillary Clinton joining in with the UN this UN gun ban?
I'm glad you asked that, because, quite frankly, myself and members of our staff have been NGO delegates at the United Nations for all these meetings for the last 4 or 5 years. We've been participating in them when they don't lock us out of the room. And this treaty is moving. It's on a fast track. It's not fully written yet. We've been able to slow it down as much as we could. I think, quite frankly, that somewhere along about July of next year, this treaty will be up for a vote at the General Assembly at the United Nations. And there's no doubt that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama will surely sign on to it. So gun owners really need to know who their friends and their enemies are. There are no two ways about it.
But why you would think that they can't enforce UN treaties, or even if they sign on to this? What is the next step? Project ahead if this comes to a head here and the UN votes on this and Obama through Hillary Clinton sign on to this. What do they do next?
Well, first of all, even if Obama signs on to it, a treaty has to be ratified by the United States Senate. The problem is that these treaties don't die. If the Senate changes hands, or gets more anti-gunners involved in it, they can ratify it at any time. There's still an anti-gun treaty that was done with the Organization of American States that Bill Clinton signed that's never been ratified by the Senate, never come up for a vote, but at any time if it did and got voted on, it could be the law of the land. On the other hand, you have the problem that other countries like to impose economic sanctions and trade things against countries that don't sign on to certain treaties. This is a treaty being heavily pushed by the European Union, and the EU is looking very heavily at doing all kinds of things against American gun companies and import-export to the United States of firearms. This could affect gun owners in lots of ways just by having this treaty out there, even if it's not ratified.
Do you have an email, or you just want to give that Second Amendment Foundation?
Yeah, people can reach me through the foundation's website at saf.org. Just email info at saf.org to reach us.
Now, you're located on the West Coast, correct?
I'm in our Bellevue, Washington office, which is a suburb of Seattle. We also have a publishing office in Buffalo, New York, where our publications come out of, and we also have interest offices in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento, California.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Alan. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Good luck in your fight against these gun grabbers, Alan.
Well, thank you. We need it.
Okay. Alan Gottlieb with Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms and the Second Amendment Foundation and the American Conservative Union. Keep in mind that next Monday here on the Schiffer Report, next Monday from 6:30 to 8 p.m., for about a half hour of that broadcast, I will be interviewing a good friend of mine, Larry Pratt, who heads up Gun Owners of America, Larry Pratt from Gun Owners of America, and he'll be talking with us about this issue, giving us an update on Operation Fast and Furious and some other things that the gun grabbers are doing to us. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, the phone lines are open here. I'd still like to hear from anybody out in the listening audience. Give me a call. Help me out here. We've got about 32 minutes left in this broadcast, and in the last 15 minutes or so of tonight's broadcast, I made a mistake Monday, if you listened, and I put in the wrong Charlton Heston speech. I gave my producer, Vaughn, the right copy, the right speech. This speech is very profound. I'll tell you a little bit more about it when we come back. Charlton Heston, who used to head up the NRA, great pro-gun guy, American Christian patriot. One of the last great speeches he gave before he got Alzheimer's disease, which he passed away from a few years ago, gave a speech in Washington, D.C. in 1992 at the annual CPAC convention. I was there recording this, and in fact, at 3 different occasions that year, I personally met with Charlton Heston and interviewed him a few times live there in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, I've lost those interviews, can't find them, but I have some good photos of myself with Charlton Heston that I cherish. A great American patriot. He would have made a great president. So we're going to conclude the broadcast with one of the most powerful speeches I've ever heard. We'll play that for you. Charlton Heston talking about the liberal agenda. Even though it was 98 and it's a dated speech, it's still more than relevant because he speaks out about all of us standing up against the political correct agenda, the political correct mob, and standing up against the speech police and the liberal agenda. We'll be right back. And I'm back. I'm your host, Paul Schiffer, and we still have a good solid half hour left of programming tonight. I'd like to hear from the audience if you've been listening to the program tonight, whether you agree or not with what we've been talking about, this Operation Fast and Furious and the Obama administration's desire, their program to take away our guns. They're very pro-gun control against the Second Amendment. And we thank Alan Gottlieb for joining us tonight the past half hour to talk about this scandal that could turn out to be, I think, in my opinion at least, worse than Watergate or Whitewater or Iran-Contra or any of those other presidential scandals in the past. This is the Operation Fast and Furious scandal. Supposedly, apparently, Barack Obama and his Attorney General, Eric Holder, behind this illegal selling of thousands upon thousands of weapons being sold to the Mexican Drug Cartels. And there's apparently been blowback. Quite a few people have died, including border agent Brian Terry. And keep in mind that our border agents, especially those even in the BORTAC unit, which is like a special forces group there at the border, they're under orders to use non-lethal beanbag loads against these heavily armed bandits using WASR-10s for the most part, which is a variant of the Russian AK-47 assault weapon. So you're listening to the Schiffer Report. Give us a call, 330-492-6881. If you're listening from the Tuscarawas County area, you can call us anytime, toll-free, 330-874-2424. I have some more damning information about our illustrious Attorney General, Eric Holder. We've already told you about his apparent involvement in this Operation Fast and Furious, gun-running thing to Mexican drug cartels. But also, as bad as that, is Holder does not seem to understand. He seems to be clueless about the nature of radical Islam, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. And I also have a story here that's also disturbing. The Obama CIA has been partnering with Mexican drug cartels, apparently. We'll see what's up with that. Again, you're listening to the Schiffer Report. Feel free to give us a call, 330-492-6881 or 330-874-2424. Again, I'd like to promote, I need to promote again my fundraising event or dinner that's going to be next Wednesday, October 12th. Again, the Schiffer Report radio broadcast fundraising dinner at the 356 Fighter Group will take place next Wednesday, October 12th, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the 356 Fighter Group, a great restaurant pretty close there to the Akron-Canton Airport. It'll be $10 a person, that pays for your food. Of course, it's a fundraiser for this broadcast. We're going to be doing raffles. We'll have book giveaways and many other things we'll be giving away that night. So feel free to come. I'd like to see you out there. I'd like to see who's been listening to this broadcast. That's the Schiffer Report fundraising dinner next Wednesday, October 12th, 7 to 9 p.m. at the 356 Fighter Group. I have... And if you'd like more information about that or like to give me a call anytime on my cell phone, feel free to call me anytime at 216-276-8257. Again, my cell is 216-276-8257. Going back to this Newsmax magazine article, the cover story, The Collapse of Mexico and Its Civil War Comes to America from June of this year. Excellent story written by... many different authors, including my friend Ken Timmerman from Washington, D.C. But it talks in this article about terrorists from Middle Eastern countries who are seeping through the U.S.-Mexican border. This is another reason why we need to put that fence up all along the border, heavily arm that border, and keep these illegals from coming through. Stop it. Our government refuses to do that, though, and it's not just Mexicans and Central and South Americans coming through. It's not just these warring drug cartels that are coming through, shooting and killing innocent people. But listen to this list that was put together. This is a chart from the Department of Homeland Security. Very frightening here. This is another reason why we need to seal up our borders. But this chart gives a list of all of the nations involved that are citizens from these countries who were apprehended either crossing the border or already in the United States in a single year. These are the ones crossing the border. This is where they're coming from, crossing, again, the Mexican-U.S. border, coming right across the border. From Afghanistan, this year already, 6 illegals from Afghanistan. 41 from that terrorist country, Algeria. Listen to this, over 1,559 communist Cubans coming across our border this past year. From Iran, which is a nation classified by the U.S. Department of State as a terror-sponsored nation. From Iran, we had 128 come across the border. From Iraq, 131. From Lebanon, 138. From Liberia, 100. From Libya itself, 6 terrorists came across the border, 6 this past year. Nigeria, 256. Pakistan, which has been harboring Al-Qaeda and felicitating their terrorism around the world. Pakistan had 409 come through our border. Saudi Arabia, 52. Sudan, 43. Syria, 68 last year. Total apprehended at the border over 3,103 terrorists from terror-sponsoring countries coming through, seeping through the U.S.-Mexican border. Yet our government refuses to do anything about it. Now, getting back to this terrible attorney general that we have, Eric Holder, we've already talked about his probable and possible involvement with Operation Fast and Furious, and more on this will be coming out over the weekend and next week, I'm sure. But get a load of this. Eric Holder, our attorney general, was the keynote speaker at the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony for the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia. I got this story from Human Events, the National Conservative Weekly, one of my favorite publications, also the favorite of former President Ronald Reagan. But a couple weeks ago, in this Human Events editorial, it's called Bar Holder from all 9/11 memorials. We got to keep Eric Holder from going to any more 9/11 memorials. Says, we know he's our attorney general and all, but bringing Eric Holder anywhere near a 9/11 observance is like giving John Hinckley Jr. a front row seat at the Reagan Library debate. This should never happen. Why? Goes on to say, not only has Eric Holder stacked his Justice Department with jihadist sympathizers, this is the same man who brazenly told a House Judiciary Committee that radical Islam wasn't even not one of the contributing factors motivating Middle Eastern terrorists. Remember this exchange? Last year, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Lamar Smith asked Eric Holder over and over again whether any of the terrorist plots devised against Americans was due to a certain strain of Islam. Holder hedged by shooting back, "There are a variety of reasons why people have taken these actions. You have to look at each individual case." Questioned as to whether radical Islam was one of those reasons, Holder balked again and again. In the 2-minute exchange with Smith, Eric Holder refused to use the phrase radical Islam even once. This man's clueless, folks, and he's our Attorney General. So when Eric Holder told the 9/11 audience that despite the best efforts of our enemies, our resolve has never wavered or weakened, we're unsure what he's referring to, because in this bizarre world, in Obama land, it's forbidden to mention that the hijackers were part of an Islamic suicide pact. Who are these enemies of which he speaks, then? It is though to Holder, Muhammad Atta and his boys burned with fury at the taste of American lamb kebabs. Religious motivation apparently had nothing to do with the attacks, according to this politically correct bunch in D.C. But that's only one reason to keep Eric Holder far, far, far away from future September 11 memorials. There are many more reasons. Holder went on to tell those gathered at the D.C. 9/11 memorial recently that his commitment to doing not just what is necessary, but what is right to protect the safety and the civil liberties of those we serve remains certain. What a load of horse droppings, this article says. Holder has stacked his Justice Department with 9 political appointees who had previously done pro bono legal work for Gitmo inmates. One of these appointees, recall, was Tony West, who represented the American Taliban John Walker Lynn after he was captured in Afghanistan for fighting U.S. troops. Such an olive branch to suspected terror suspects is nothing new for Holder, as he was a senior partner at a prestigious Washington, D.C. law firm that boasts to this day that it's been representing Guantanamo Bay inmates free of charge for the past 6 years. This is just, it's an abomination. It's an abomination. It's terrible. We have an attorney general who is an avowed Marxist, who is part and parcel, apparently, of this drug-running effort to arm Mexican drug warlords and the Mexican Drug Cartels with weapons, selling U.S. weapons to these people, yet by the same token, working with our Justice Department, working with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to try to put together a UN proposal to take away all of our arms, our right to bear arms. Very distressing news. And folks, if you're listening to this broadcast for the first time tonight, and you're a person or a Christian even that thinks Obama's all right, hopefully this wakes you up a little bit. Hopefully you're being shaken to the core about what an evil man we have running this government. So very frightening information here concerning the CIA. Well, do we have somebody that wants to go on the air right now, Vaughn? Okay, if not, why don't we just put in this clip again? This is a speech that are recorded in Washington, D.C. in 1998. Charlton Heston, who at the time was heading up the NRA, Charlton Heston, a good conservative patriot, speaking out, denouncing liberalism and the politically correct people out there promoting this political the speech police out there that are basically restricting what we can say and do in this country. Again, Charlton Heston back in 1998.
I can do, I believe, better than most, because most can't. You don't see many Hollywood luminaries speaking out for conservative candidates, do you? No. Please understand, it's not because there aren't any. It's because they dare not take the heat. They dare not speak up for fear of ABC or CBS or CNN or Warner Brothers, or worst of all, the IRS. Cultural war saps the strength of our country because the personal price is simply too high to stand up for what you believe in. Today, speaking with the courage of your conviction can be so costly the price of principle so great that legislators won't leave. Now, if that fact doesn't unsettle you, friend, then you are already a casualty of the cultural war. You're already anesthetized. So, how do we get out of this mess? Moses led his people through the wilderness, but he never made it to the promised land. Not even when I played him.
I'm Paul Schiffer again. I cut into Charlton Heston's speech very quickly because I had decided I wanted to give a copy. I burned copies of this speech. It, again, is an excellent speech. It's a classic from the late, great Charlton Heston. Speech he delivered in Washington, D.C. in 1998, even though it's back in 98. The message is still more than relevant now, more so now than ever under Obama, because obviously he's far worse than Clinton ever thought of being. So anybody that wants to call in and win a copy of this speech, I'll mail a copy on CD of this classic Charlton Heston speech to you, the entire speech, which goes about 20 minutes. We're just playing excerpts now. So if you give us a call, we'll take down your name and address and send you a copy of this Charlton Heston speech. The phone lines again are 330-492-6881. Again, that's 330-492-6881. If you're listening in Tuscarawas County, call us toll-free at 330-874-2424. So anybody calls in, we'll mail you eventually a free copy of this Charlton Heston speech. Now back to Charlton Heston.
The Bill of Rights wasn't cut into stone tablets, but the text surely has that same righteous feel to it. It's as if you can sense the unseen hand of the Almighty God guiding the sweep of a goose quill pen while a bunch of rebellious old white guys sweated out the birth of a nation. Jefferson, Adams, Paine, Franklin, Madison, they pointed the way, and we made it to this promised land, the one our immigrant ancestors dreamed of, the land Abe Lincoln called man's last best hope on earth. Look at me. Where else but in America could a skinny country kid named Charlton work his way out of the Michigan Northwoods and find a life that helps make a difference, maybe? A long time ago, my country put the gift of freedom in my hand and said, "Here, kid, make something out of this." That's why I so deeply love this great nation and the Constitution that defines it. Just about everything I hope is good about me, who I am, what I've tried to do, can be traced back to those smoking muskets and the radical declaration of independence by those ragtag rebels wearing threadbare coats and marching on bloody feet. They defeated the finest army assembled in that century, and they gave the world hope. Within them flowed an undertow of personal freedom, a relentless sense of what is right, so irresistibly strong that they simply could not abandon it. But today's cultural warriors are trying. They're revising and rewriting these truths, yanking the Bill of Rights out of our lives like a parking ticket stuck under your windshield wiper. They're trading traditions that are true for trends that tease us with more immediate reward. Self-gratification has displaced honor. Greed has erased good taste. The desires of the moment have undermined basic morality. We are fast becoming a self-serving, boorish, and arrogant people, given to cultural binges, quick to dismiss anything in substance that stands in the way of our unleashed desires. That's the culturally bereft America we see and hear in our movies, television, popular music, even, I shudder to say, in our television prime-time news shows. We should have known what to expect when the Earthshoe generation skipped into the White House. carrying a Paisley suitcase full of social experiments and revisionist history. Bill and Hillary are the product of a cultural revolution that had absolutely nothing whatever to do with the power of flowers. It was an adolescent uprising bent on burning bridges, not building them. Our president's recent troubles are dramatic proof that cultural war is not a clash over the facts or even between philosophies. It's a clash between the principled and the unprincipled. Now, I'm not talking about whether he did it or didn't do it. I'm talking about people who cannot comprehend moral absolutes in a country that seems to accept that. Here we are, 2 nights after the State of the Union speech, trapped in the silly spectacle of having our values measured hourly by the polls, as if the definition of the right thing changed like a national mood ring. What do you think of the president? Well, wait, after this speech, or now, how do you feel? Oh, wait, after the White House spin, how do you feel? But wait, after the First Lady's interview, now, how do you feel? Behavior is judged and rejudged, based not on what's right, but upon what feels right, and to whom at that moment. This is how cultural warriors use sexual crime to destroy their enemies. Sex between consenting adults shatters the career of the Army's most senior enlisted man. A sexual infraction wrecks the life of a 4-star general. And sexual gossip impugns the integrity of a Supreme Court nominee. Yet, with the right spin by the right doctor, others are gleefully forgiven. Somewhere in this rancid mess, we fight to find principle our children can understand. But Americans shouldn't have to go to war every morning for their values. They already go to work and war for their families. They fight to hold down a job, raise responsible kids, make their payments, keep gas in the car, put food on the table, clothes on their backs, and still save a little for their final days so they can live in dignity. They prefer the America they built, where you could pray without feeling naive, love without being kinky, sing without profanity, be white without feeling guilty, own a gun without shame, and raise your hand without apology. They are the masses who find themselves under siege and long for you to get some guts, stand on principle, and lead them to victory in this cultural war. They are sick and tired of national social policy that originates on Oprah. And they're ready for you, ladies and gentlemen, who hold power, to pull the plug. Now, if this all sounds a little mosaic, my punchline is as elementary as the golden rule. There's only one way to win a cultural war. Do the right thing. Triumph belongs to those who arm themselves with pride in who they are and what they believe, and then do the right thing. Not the most expedient thing, not what'll sell, not the politically correct thing, but the right thing. You know what? Everybody already knows what that is. You, I, we know the right thing. President Clinton, Madonna, Louis Farrakhan, even Marilyn Manson. We all know. It's easy. You say, wait a minute. Take a long look in the mirror, then into the eyes of your kids or grandkids, and you'll know what's right. I promise to try to reconnect you with that sense of purpose, that compass for what's right that already lives in you. To unleash its power, you need only unbridle your pride and rearm yourself with the raw courage of your convictions. Our ancestors were armed with pride and bequeathed it to us. I can prove it. If you want to feel the warm breath of freedom on your neck, If you want to touch the proud pulse of liberty that beats in our founding fathers in its purest form, you can do so through the majesty of the Second Amendment, right to keep and bear arms. Because there, in that wooden stock and blued steel, is what gives the most common of common men the most uncommon of freedoms. When ordinary hands are free to own.
Oh, sorry to cut in there. I'm your host, Paul Schiffer. That was just a little excerpt from one of the best speeches I think ever delivered down there in Washington, D.C. from the late, great actor and political activist and Christian Charlton Heston. Speech he delivered in 1998 in Washington, D.C. at the CPAC conference. Again, if you'd like a copy of this speech, we'll burn a copy for you on CD. It gets even better. He talks about our responsibilities to stand up against this liberal madness. And again, this speech is as important and relevant today as it was back in 1998. You've been listening to the Schiffer Report. This broadcast will be back, Lord willing, next Monday at 6:30 p.m. here on WNPQ. Give me a call if you'd like to go to the fundraiser. You don't have to RSVP, but again, I'm having a Schiffer Report fundraiser next Wednesday, October 12th from 7 to 9 p.m. Next Wednesday at the 356 Fighter Group. Again, my number is 216-276-8257. God bless you. Have a great weekend.